All right, so welcome everyone. Again, my name is Brian Cook. I'm the SVP of Higher Education here at Paymerang. We appreciate you taking the time to register and take part in our webinar. Today we're going to be discussing the impact the pandemic has had and is having on businesses and institutions and how to pivot, go remote, and handle your AP disbursements moving forward. We'll probably add some additional color and commentary around software as a service in general to help with business continuity plans. But today I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jim Walker. Jim will be the brains of our operation today. Jim leads the development of our strategic partnerships in healthcare and other key industries. Jim is an innovator and thought leader in financial technology. He provides seasoned leadership and counsel to several folks across the country. Jim has also co-founded several technology companies, including InWorks. InWorks is a company in Portland, Oregon that Paymerang just acquired in the first quarter. He also started up Medicine Bow Technologies and Upright Systems. He served Intel as National Director of Channel Development, creating a $1 billion business plan and channel strategy, and was recruited from Intel to Tektronix, where he built a $30 billion business service. We are very fortunate to have Jim on the phone today. Jim's going to go through the information, and again, we'll have time for Q&A segment at the end. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Jim. Welcome, Jim, and thanks for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
All right. Just make sure I didn't hit the mic. And when you were all joining, Brian was talking about the lawn being mowed next door or whatever. But when I was doing a webinar last week, my cleaning company actually showed up 2 hours early right off my office ringing the doorbell. So I had to pause and go do that. So hopefully that won't happen today. But it is kind of crazy that we're all probably working from home today. And this pandemic has kind of created a crazy time, but I believe strongly we'll get through it together and be stronger on the other side. And the thing I'm excited about is that Paymerang is really focused on trying to help businesses do the same, get through this pandemic and be stronger on the other side. And we're going to talk about that in a couple different ways today. We'll talk about the services that we provide as a company that can help you do that, as well as we're going to talk about our company and how the experience we've had in pivoting to be a 100% work from home workforce. And before I start that, let me just say that as Brian was saying, I've had the opportunity to build and sell a couple different companies, and this latest one, I can honestly say, going from a drawing on a piece of paper in a Starbucks all the way to a business that was bought by a phenomenal company like Paymerang was just an incredible journey, one that was extraordinarily rewarding, but also probably the most difficult thing that I've ever done. And there's no roadmap to build a company and have it sold. You've got to be able to turn on a dime. You've got to be able to manage very difficult problems that you did not foresee and move beyond them and get stronger on the other side of those problems. And I just feel like that we're all in that same mode today with this pandemic. It's just created unforeseen business circumstances that are just unseen before, I think. Entire industries shutting down. I was talking to my favorite airline yesterday, and they were saying it was like working in a ghost town at these airports and in airplanes across the country. Disruption of workforce, everybody working from home, and yet businesses are still up and operating. Some of them are, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Supply chains, we hear a lot about supply chains, especially in healthcare, but even if you don't have a traditional supply chain, the ability to keep your business running by being able to procure and pay for goods and services is critical. And if you don't have a business plan that is strong and solid and doesn't have gaps in it for your supply chain, then you could really be in a lot of trouble. And one company back in the 90s found this out in a very dramatic way, and that company was Burger King. Burger King had a unique challenge in their business continuity plan because they had about a 48-hour window of which to get systems back up and running if they ever went down, because every 48 hours they had to order perishables for thousands of restaurants across the country. So think about that: lettuce, tomatoes, buns, even meat and potatoes. And if they couldn't order them, then literally restaurants would shut down. So that 48-hour window was critical as part of their continuity plan. But they also had a unique problem in that they were headquartered, at least their operations for their business IT, in Florida. And in 1992, Hurricane Andrew, a Cat 5 hurricane, 140-mile-an-hour winds, came barreling up from southern Florida. And so they had to withstand that. And fortunately, as part of their plan, they had this building they called the Fortress. And in Florida, it was known as the safest place to be in the entire state in case of a Cat 5 hurricane. So when the hurricane rolled in, the IT team was in the Fortress. Some of their leadership was there. They even had a few family members who couldn't escape, kind of hunkered down in the Fortress, ready to weather the storm and keep their systems up and running for thousands of restaurants across the country that weren't in Florida. And as the hurricane came in, even though they had a great business continuity plan that was well tested and they felt confident in, it had a gap. And they didn't know about it. But that gap stood across the street on the roof of another building in the form of a water tower. And those 140-mile-an-hour winds picked up that water tower, flew it across the street, and landed it on the roof of Burger King. And it cracked the roof, and water came rushing in and flooded their entire data center. And they stood in about ankle-deep water, and the 48 hours was ticking. And I'll tell you the rest of this story in just a little bit as we move through our webinar. It has a great ending, but it's a very interesting ending. So I'll look forward to sharing that in a minute. But I think this kind of illustrates the idea that companies really have critical gaps in their business continuity plans, especially today. In fact, a study by a group called the Papers, P-A-Y-P-E-R-S, if you want to look it up, showed that only 60% of companies even had a business continuity plan today. And 37% of companies would be able to withstand the circumstances we have today with everybody having to work from home. They just don't have the technology and the tools to work remotely. That same study went on to show that only 54% of businesses would be able to make payments in this environment, and less than half could process invoices. So think about it. If you want to keep your supply chain running, or even your business operations up and running, you've got to be able to procure goods and services remotely. You have to be able to process, receive and process invoices remotely. And you've got to be able to make payments on time remotely. If you can't do all three, then you're going to have a gap in your supply chain. And sure enough, Paymerang, being a payment automation company, is seeing businesses that are urgently scrambling to pay their suppliers today and enable a 100% workforce. And as we move through this webinar, we're going to talk about how we can help you and how we've been managing through this pandemic. And specifically, we're going to talk about how to rapidly launch an ePayable solution today that'll cover the payment part of that procure to pay process I just talked about. But you'll still have to be able to procure an invoice remotely, but we'll cover the payment type part. And then we'll also talk about our experience in enabling a 100% remote workforce. So think about that. If we have hundreds of clients today that are literally receiving the same level of service that they were a month ago. And a month ago, we were in an office that's a phenomenal environment. And Brian can tell you, I mean, the first time I experienced it in January when I flew out after Paymerang bought Inworks, I was amazed. Everybody in the same building with a culture of energy and focus and optimism, serving the client with an incredible level of white glove service. And so how did we go from that environment in just a couple of weeks to now everybody working from home and yet maintain the same service level? And we're going to talk about that too. But let's start with talking about how to enable an ePayable solution very quickly. So here's that data that I talked about. 60% of businesses have a continuity plan, but only 37 can manage in today's remote environment. And then also 54% of companies would have trouble making their payments on time. One such client was not a client just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to have Brian talk about this client and tell you their story. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks. It's really a pretty simple story. We had a K through 12 that was really in trouble in terms of being able to execute on the payments that they needed to make. And they reached out to us and essentially said, can you get us up and running as quickly as possible so that we can not have to go into the office? We're not allowed to go into the office. We can't print checks. And all of our suppliers are asking us to pay via ACH and or card. So our team responded accordingly, and we got all the information from the client we needed in the first probably 24 hours. And in less than 3 days or 72 hours, they were up and running on a full-scale ePayments platform where they could execute all of those payments remotely. So, this is just one of many stories. We boarded several institutions in 7 days or less in the last 30 days. And, but that's just a testament really to our team's ability to work with clients to solve their business continuity issues. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Being part of on the leadership of a couple different fintech companies and been in this space for well over 10 years, kind of watched it grow, and 72 hours is unheard of. That was a phenomenal feat. Now, we don't always do 72 hours, but we do it fast, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think there's actually two key points with Savannah Christian Prep. One is that they now have a solution that they can operate remotely and make sure that they get their vendors paid on time. But if we get it up in 3 days, but it takes 3 weeks to learn to use the system, then it really wouldn't have met their needs. And I don't know, Brian, probably took them 30 minutes, right, to learn to use the system. It's very, very simple, and this is how it works. You upload your invoices in a batch to us. You fund those invoices, then you mark them as paid, and you're done. A few clicks, a few minutes. Upload your invoices, mark them paid, you're done. So, and then we take it from there, and we'll remit all of your payments to your vendors, and we'll pay them however they want to be paid, by check, by ACH, by credit card, and we reconcile every single one of those payments down to the last dollar. And if somebody hasn't deposited a check, one of your vendors will call them and get them to deposit that or find out what the problem is. If there's a check or a credit card that hasn't been processed, we'll call them and get them to process the credit card. And we'll make sure every ACH securely gets to where it's supposed to go in 48 hours. And then at the end of all that, we actually will pay you cash rewards for those credit card payments where we earn a rebate from those cards. We'll actually share those rewards back with you, and they can be significant. In fact, you'll probably never see a fee or an invoice you ever have to pay to Paymerang. In fact, you'll make some money.
Jim, I'd like to add just as a point of clarification that the clients don't actually upload their invoices to us. They're simply uploading the invoice details and payment details, or maybe better said, a checks to be issued file from a batch that's ready to go out that they've already coded.
Right.
So they don't upload the physical invoice.
Thanks, Brian. In fact, we're very remote friendly. And a key thing in this environment is also to have remote friendly the ability to process your invoices and do procurement through your other solutions. But certainly your AP or your ERP system is the source of truth. what we do is take the payments remotely, and key part of that is remotely. You really can make your payments from anywhere. And we also do it very quickly. So the same day you get them to us, we get those checks, ACH, and cards out. And because of that, your vendors are happier. So you have a really fast process. Your vendors get paid quickly. They get paid the way they want to. And then also, if you think about it, if you give us all your payments when you launch this kind of a solution, you go paperless day one. Now, on the back side of that, we may still be sending some checks to some of your suppliers, but our goal is to whittle all of those down to a point where we're not sending out any checks. It's all electronic. And typically, our hundreds of clients are somewhere between 70 and 90% of all of their payments are electronic. And we'll do all of this extraordinarily securely, which is critical in today's remote electronic environment. And we really eliminate fraud. We make sure every payment gets where it's supposed to be securely. And then at the end of the day, your AP department can actually generate revenue. So let's talk about how this really augments your business continuity plan. So first of all, again, we ensure fast payments to your vendors. And the key thing about that too in today's environment is not only do you need to be able to make payments remotely, but your suppliers need to be able to accept them. So if they have checks being mailed to their office, they may not be able to get in and deposit them. So this is a great service for your suppliers too, because we can work with them to get paid electronically. Second, you can access from anywhere. So this is the software as a service, and we'll talk about that even a little bit more when we talk about how we run our business remotely. But software as a service is great because these tools sit up in the cloud. The cloud is very reliable. It backs up from one part of the country to another part of the country, even from one part of the world to the other part of the world. So if there's a problem, a hurricane in Florida, for example, everything keeps working. And the other thing I really like about this, though, is that you can do this from anywhere. I was talking to a controller who helped run, this was just last week, helps run a senior living organization out here in Oregon where I live. And she was on her way to the Oregon coast. If you've never been to the Oregon coast, I highly recommend it, but do it in the summertime. It's spectacular, it's beautiful. And she was on her way there to see a sunset on a Friday night and spend the weekend. And in Oregon, the sunset on the coast is like 9:30, quarter to 10 in the summertime. And so she was on her way and was looking forward to that and realized there was a very critical payment that she forgot to make. Literally had to turn around, go back to the office, cut a check, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and put it in a mailbox to make sure it went out on Saturday. Then headed back to the coast. By the time she got there, it was 10:30 or 11. The sun was gone. She missed the sunset. A minor thing, but in our world with Paymerang, she literally could have pulled off the side of the road safely, pulled out her smartphone, and then sent us her payments, funded them, marked them as paid, done. So you can do that from anywhere on any kind of a computer device. Then we store all of your sensitive data for you in extraordinarily secure, ultra secure vault, really. And that data really isn't even accessed, can't even be accessed by our own people. But it allows you to not have to store that sensitive data, for example, bank information about your suppliers. We do that for you, and we adhere to all kinds of compliance requirements, including SOC 2, PCI for credit cards, HIPAA for healthcare, and others for all kinds of banking regulations. And then we make sure that your payments get to where they're supposed to go securely. And this is critical. One K through 12 school recently, literally within the last couple months, went to make an ACH payment to the company that they were buying their turf from for their kids to have a soccer field. And I suspect that turf was a Nike turf, Nike out here in Oregon where I live. But in the middle of making that payment, a North African person or organization hijacked that ACH payment of $500,000 and they lost it. It didn't get the field. And it was a very sophisticated operation that had information that you wouldn't believe they could get, but they got it. And it became very public because it was a public school. And when they came to us, their comment was, well, we love being able to do this remotely, but we can never have another payment stole ever again. And with Paymerang, they won't. Then I think maybe the last thing I'll say is that all of this remote payment operation is really very easy and very fast to implement. And you know, unlike Savannah Christian Prep, maybe we don't do it in 3 days, but we tell all of our clients that it'll be 30 days or less, and it'll take you 20 hours or less. And usually it's less on both of those. In fact, we survey every one of our clients. We've done this hundreds of times, and 92% of them say it was easier and faster than they expected. So you really can be up and running in less than 30 days. Well, let me tell you the end of the Burger King story, and then we'll move on to the second part of the webinar. But so there was Burger King standing in ankle-deep water with their 48-hour clock ticking. And it just so happened that in the Northwest, we were running a business at the time that helped companies like Burger King recover in a disaster, which means we had to rebuild their systems. They'd come with backup tapes, load their backup tapes, and they could get up and run from our remote data center. So I get the call from Burger King, and they say, Jim, we're on our way. Everything's down. 48 hours is ticking. Have our systems ready. When we get there, we'll be there in 20 hours. So 20 hours later, they landed with their tapes. We had their systems up and running, mainframes. They began to load their tapes, and another unforeseen problem. When tapes are even a little bit damp, and these were, they don't load. And we spent about the next 10 or 12 hours talking to scientists at the University of Washington, at IBM, the tape manufacturer, trying to get those tapes to read and to load with no avail. And then one of our support people, Kelly, who really had coordinated their travel and done everything to get set up, took one of those tapes kind of meekly and shyly and shuffled back into the women's restroom and fired up one of the hair dryers we had in there, and blew dry about 12 inches of that tape and brought it back up and said, I don't know what else to do, so try this. And we put it on, and it worked. And so we went out and bought about 10 hair dryers and spent the next 8 or 9 hours drying tapes and loading them. And we didn't make 48 hours, but we made 50 hours, and they never had to shut down a store. So a disaster that the rest of the country never knew about. So I just want to say that if you are interested in this service, then reach out to Brian. I'm going to go back a slide. This is Brian's contact information. We'd love to give you a demo. We'd love to tell you more about this. We'll get the right people on the phone if you have specific questions, but Brian can help you with that. We look forward to talking to you about how you can launch a ePayable solution very quickly as well. But let's talk about how Paymerang has kind of shifted from an in-the-office environment to 100% from home, because if we're not up and running, we can't deliver the service that we're talking about. And a number of our clients, like Melissa at Hotchkiss Schools, recognize this, who've been clients for us for a while, that Paymerang has become a necessity for them. They would not be able to operate remotely without it. So we have to be up and running ourselves to keep our clients up and running. So, call it what you'd like: working from home, social distancing, working remotely, telecommuting, whatever you want to call it. This environment has just changed how we do work. And fortunately today, unlike Burger King that had to rebuild the mainframe somewhere else in the country, we have software as a service. So if you can use software as a service tools, your software, your apps will always be up and running. And so at Paymerang, we deliver software as a service app, but our other apps are also software as a service. So we were ready from a technology standpoint, but we still had to ask ourselves 3 questions. one, are we ready for a 100% work from home workforce? Are we ready to do that? Second, if we are, will we still be secure with people working from home? So security is a critical part of our service. And then finally, how do we manage this environment? So we're used to having everybody in the office doing stand-ups and being able to talk to people on an ongoing basis, face-to-face. How are we going to manage that remotely? So let's start by kind of talking about security. So with a new environment, there are new threats. So you have newly deployed remote working infrastructure, and it basically gives new opportunities for all kinds of malicious behavior, even by insiders. So it might be your employees, but it could just be somebody who's in the homes of your employees. So you don't have control over that anymore. So sometimes it could be insiders. But your entire security environment really is weakened because now you have people operating outside of the firewall. So you have to really be able to lock down that environment. And then scammers, people outside are, looking to find new ways to take advantage of these environments in all new ways. And sadly, I talked to a friend that was part of this really cool healthcare company that's doing really, really well. And a couple of weeks ago, they were having a Zoom session with all of their employees and with some of their key clients. And sadly, somebody from the outside got into that Zoom session and began showing things they shouldn't show and people did not want to see, and they had to shut it down immediately. It was horrible. But it just goes to show that bad people are looking to do bad things in this new environment. So you've got to start by having a great plan to work from home, a predetermined business continuity plan. We've talked a bit about that, but ours we were able to execute in phases. It was multi-pronged, so we could take out different operations within the business over a 2-week period and not have to try to do it all at once and really stress your organization that's trying to continue to deliver services to clients, and at the same time everybody moved to their home. So we were able to do that over a couple of weeks very successfully. Also, you've got to be able to continue to monitor health organizations and state governments. You need to have people doing that, designated to do that. And then a communication network where people are informed if there's changes. So in Virginia, excuse me, when the order came that everybody had to stay home, it wasn't, you have a week to get ready. It's tomorrow, everybody needs to be home. So you've got to be able to communicate things very quickly and enact them. And that means that you've got to cross-train your employees about how to work from home. And you got to be able to test every work function from home so you can perform all the operations. Going back to the supply chain, can you do procurement, invoicing, and payments all from home, as well as the rest of your business? And then every time somebody new comes online from home, you've got to be able to test that they're able to be up, running, and productive. And then finally, it's a new level of security. So there's all kinds of security training we have on a regular basis inside the office. But outside the office, there's even additional things that you have to be able to do. And we'll talk about that in a second. So the first thing is to lock down those desktops, those work environments at home. And it starts by only allowing authorized tools to be used, communication tools. And with Paymerang, we allow one instant messaging tool, phone and video calls, and then also email. And that's it. Specific tools, and those are the only ones that we allow our folks to use as they're working from home. We also use voice over IP for phones. It's very flexible. People's phone numbers from when they're in the office can follow them to their desktop at home and even to their smartphones as they walk away from their desktops. People have been trained and enforced in this new office security environment. And we use a tool called KnowBe4 to do that, and it is a software as a service tool, so everybody can use it from home. And it allows us to set up training that they can take remotely, finish it, and we can track that they finished it sufficiently. And if not, we can reach out to them and have them do it. So we really can enforce all the training that's required. And then we also have established remote technical support, and that's critical because you can't just get up and walk over to IT like you do in the office. You've got to be able to have a quick way through your communication tools to get to IT for our support. Last week I had a licensing problem with a piece of software on my laptop and reached out to this remote technical support, and they had an answer to me in 5 minutes. So that kind of support is really critical to your team working from home. But it's not enough really to just lock down your security with these systems at homes. You've got to be able to have your employees' participation. So one, getting that training and having a tool to do that training so you can manage it. But also to be able to verify communications on a regular basis so that you think before you click, you slow down and verify, is this communication somebody I should be talking to? Is it a client? Is it a validated partner? Is it a colleague? Is this somebody I should be communicating with? And then slow down so you can think before you click, and that's critical. And then if there's any kind of a suspected attack or a problem, report it immediately. And we use that same technical support network, remote support capability for reporting any suspected attacks. Okay, so at home, all of our systems are locked down. People have had their training, they're participating in keeping everything secure. But as a leadership team, how do we manage this environment from home? And this is the cadence that we've come up with that is allowing us to deliver the same level of service that we do out of our offices. Now, we look forward to getting back to our offices, but for now, we're able to do this. And it starts with daily stand-ups. So just like we have in the office, we have daily stand-ups, and we use video chat to do that. And that's a critical piece. We want to be able to see people, make sure they're okay, and make sure everybody's participating on a daily basis. And we measure daily metrics. We measure what matters, but we measure it on a daily basis. And then we have weekly one-on-ones to check in with our people to make sure they're doing okay. And then also weekly department meetings, again by video, so that everybody can connect. And we use a chat device, so whether that's Slack or Teams or something else, that's a great tool for people to keep connections, keep communicating, provide some levity. Ours often make me laugh during the day, and that we found that to be very, very valuable. And then finally, this is actually what our employees tell us works well from home. So we've adopted these standards for our work from home environments. Create a routine. That's critical. So get up at the same time you would have to drive into the office. If you have leftover time now because you don't have to commute in the morning, we'll use it for a better breakfast or time with family or prepare for the day. Have a workspace. Know where you're going to work. Maybe it's an office you already have. Maybe it's a spare room. Maybe it's the dining room or kitchen table that you clear off and make your workspace. But have a consistent workspace. Set expectations with your family members. Maybe you need a family continuity plan to make sure that people understand that if they wouldn't have called you at the office because it was urgent, don't interrupt you at home. Address underperformance. So this is interesting. Our people are saying, hey, let me know if I'm not doing something right from home or if my production's gone down because I want to fix it sooner than later. So that's critical. Take breaks. Often I forget to drink water throughout the day and have a headache. And so make sure you take breaks, drink water, eat, take a walk, and then find a work-life balance that works. So stick to a schedule as part of your routine. Take evenings off, relax, find things to do on the weekend to get away from work, because in this environment, you're kind of always in your workplace. So I'd just like to take a minute and thank you for allowing us to spend the last 30 minutes or so in this webinar with you. We look forward to be able to have more conversations with you. And again, I'll just end with another quote from one of our clients that basically, if you want to have your payments done remotely, you have a few simple clicks and you give it up to Paymerang and we do the rest. And Brian's going to talk a little bit about Paymerang, and then we'll have time for Q&A.
Thanks, Jim. Hopefully most of the folks on the phone know who Paymerang is, but we were founded in 2010. Our largest vertical is higher education. We're associated with everybody's independent college and university state associations, and we're a coalition for college cost savings partner. Just want to add into that we also are a certified application partner with Concur. So if you're looking to automate the invoice process along with payments, Paymerang is an embedded application inside of Concur. And so you could automate it all through one single tool with virtually nothing out of pocket. But you know, for higher education, we handle disbursements, including all your vendors, contractors. We'll do employee expense reimbursements, and we also now do student refunds. Through our risk assessment and compliance officers, we've self-identified that we're GLBA compliant and FERPA compliant, and those are two great offerings for the students. They're both electronic, and all of the payments that we make on your behalf are all reconciled off of for benefit of accounts. So our clients get rid of the entire reconcilement process and see a major drop in the tracking of unclaimed funds. But that's just a little bit about us. K through 12 is our second largest vertical. And we really understand education and the diversity of disbursements that come out of the business office and the bursar's office. Net Promoter, so Paymerang really holds its hat on white glove service, or hangs our hat on white glove service. Service isn't always touted these days because everybody says that they have great service, but our higher education clients are like family to us, and we treat them as such. And Net Promoter is a way to measure client satisfaction, and it goes from -100 to +100. And really, if you're anywhere in 20 to 30%, if you're positive 20 to 30, that's a really good sign. And world class, you'll see on the chart here, Paymerang consistently ranks above 70% on the Net Promoter Score. And that just means that we provide great support to the accounts payable departments, and that the program works very smoothly and easily for our clients. And for our clients to get started, really all we need is an active vendor file, and we have pre-developed programs for every ERP in higher education. So we make the whole IT process very light and very simple to get started. So our average implementation time frame for our colleges is about 10 hours of total staff time. So it's really easy to get started. And now, if you'd like, I'm going to try to figure out how to unmute everybody. But if you have a question, you can type it in the chat bar, and we're happy to take questions at this point. Let me see here. All right. So if you are, I've unmuted everybody. If you will unmute if you have a question and ask it on your side, feel free.
How about fees associated with this program?
Hi, Mary. For coalition members, the fees are, if we pay by card, is 0. That accounts for 40 to 60% of all the transactions in higher ed. If we pay by ACH, it's a quarter, and if we pay by check, it's $1.80, and that includes postage. If we pay by e-check, which is an electronic delivery of legal tender, that's $1.25. But all of the payments themselves include all of the reconcilement, insurance protection, as well as the positive pay for any of the paper that we issue. So it's included free with our service as well. So very low fees, but the fees themselves, Mary, they come out of the gross rebates that are earned, and everything else that's left over on a quarterly basis we send to you via ACH credit. So we don't have a single institution who pays us on a quarterly basis. We pay them.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Anyone else today?
Yeah, Brian, this is Eric. I'm at a very small college, and just what size school is this really, profitable for y'all? I mean, we have direct deposit. We pay our, utilities via either, ACH or a credit card, whatever they'll take. Our insurance is paid that way. So, we've got a lot of one-off little vendors, whether they're, contract people or whatever. But even then, we don't have a terrible volume. We're not, once you take payroll and insurance and utilities out of it, I mean, that's, 75–80% of a college's expenses, or at least for us. So what kind of volume makes it worthwhile for you guys?
Well, Eric, I'm happy to chat with you offline specifically about your use case, but we have a lot of folks that are exactly like your model. In fact, just to share with you, Manhattan Christian College in Manhattan, Kansas has 185 students, and they're profitable. And it's really not so much further downstream about the rebates, because they won't be astronomical. It's really about the security, compliance, and protection that this program provides, the efficiency gains around the whole process. But when you move money electronically like you're doing, most people don't take into account the tremendous amount of regulatory requirements that are necessary. As Jim mentioned, things like SOC 2, OFAC compliance, NACHA compliance, PCI compliance, all of that is managed for you so that you don't have to. And every payment that you make through our network, Eric, every single payment is 100% protected against fraud.
And I think
so.
What I would add to that is that I'm on the board of a real small college out here in Oregon, George Fox College. And at the board level, this is something that is gotten all the attention there. It's critical that these payments that are going out are not hijacked. And so I think that the security part of it is just key in today's environment.
Well, and if you don't store sensitive banking information in your ERP and you happen to have a breach or a malware attack, it doesn't disrupt your entire business flow of payments. So there's a lot of reasons to use it, but I would always tell, whether you're a small institution or a Drake University, that Paymerang is really about efficiency, security, and compliance. The rebates are just cherry on the top. Great question, Eric. Thanks for asking it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, now, of course, you all have my contact information on the screen. Probably everybody's seen some sort of information from me in the past. I've been working with higher education since 2012, so I have a pretty good working knowledge of all the 900 private colleges and universities that are a part of the association, so I'm not hard to find. I am happy to answer any additional questions that you guys have, and/or if you have specific questions around your particular institutional environment and pivoting to be able to deal with the uncertainties of even the fall semester. We've got resources available through the National Coalition that would be happy to chat with you as well. So if there's something we didn't cover today that you hoped that we would cover, feel free to reach out to me, because we've got a lot of really talented resources that we'd be happy to provide you. We call it UPC, unpaid consulting, just to help our institutions, because this is a critical time right now in higher ed, and what's going to happen. We've all got our fingers crossed to make sure that the fall semester happens and people don't take a break as well. So, but I want to thank everybody for joining us. Jim, thank you for joining us and walking us through your expertise and how Paymerang handled things. And I hope everybody stays safe. And again, have a wonderful rest of your week, and enjoyed the time today. So at this point, we're going to sign off, and take care, everybody.
Thank you.